Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Joe Biden, then senator in 1997, talking to the Atlantic Council about Russia and NATO, had this to say.
Our conversation with Zaganos was repeated with Levitt. They talked about they don't want this NATO expansion. They know it's not in their security interests and on, and said, well, and if you do that, we may have to look to China. And I couldn't help using the colloquial expression from my state by saying to Zaganos, lots of luck in your senior year. Good luck. And if that doesn't work, try Iran. I'm serious. I said that to them, and these were and they know, I knew, they knew, everybody knows that is not an option. And everybody knows, every one of those leaders acknowledges and needs, and they resent it. But they need to look west. And the question is, whether this is designed to completely shut them out, but not in terms.
Well, that didn't age particularly well, blithely dismissing Russia's concerns about NATO expansion in the direction of the Baltic states, which, of course, ultimately happened. And the problem is not NATO expansion. The problem is blithely dismissing Russia's position on it and what they were willing to do. Now, that was still when Boris Yeltsin was the president of Russia. But it doesn't seem like Biden and the D.C. foreign policy establishment updated their understanding of Russian posture on the topic once Vlad Putin took over, despite what he said over the last 20 years. Those were the judgment calls of Joe Biden and the deep thinkers inside the Beltway. Have they improved much in the intervening 2 decades? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Bradley Bowman, Senior Director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He served as a National Security Advisor to members of the U.S. Senate Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committees, as well as an active duty U.S. Army officer, Black Hawk pilot, and assistant professor at West Point. Brad Bowman, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Before we fast forward to present, what about the Council on Foreign Relations, neocon foreign policy establishment's views, and in my estimation, the lack of evolution of those views over the last 20 years, and a lack of appreciation for what Putin was willing to do and when?
Thanks for the question. We're a nonpartisan think tank, and we really try to call balls and strikes regardless of who's pitching. And I think in my research and working a lot of these issues in the U.S. Senate for 9 years, I really do think there's a lot of blame to go around for both Republicans and Democrats. Frankly, some of your listeners may have seen Jake Tapper's segment on Sunday, where he basically went back to 2000 and walked through each of the administrations, from George W. Bush looking in Vladimir Putin's eyes and seeing a soul and a man he can trust, to Obama, telling Medvedev, that, hey, I'll have more flexibility after the election, to Obama refusing to provide Ukraine the means to defend itself with weapons after the Crimea invasion, all the way on to the present. So I, for one, see a consistent, unfortunate, sad failure from both Republicans and Democrats to understand Vladimir Putin, understand his objectives, and understand how he views weakness and concession as a green light to additional aggression. And I put, 2008 invasion of Georgia in that, where they still, as some of your listeners will know, they're still occupying parts of Georgia. We basically did nothing in response to that. After the 2014, Little Green Men invasion and annexation of Crimea, John Kerry marveled at, this is 19th century behavior. Well, yeah, we're seeing a little bit of that in the 21st century. Human nature remains kind of the same. Right. And so weak response there. And then Donbass, 14,000 dead Ukrainians, weak response there. And then the Biden administration, which I'd say is doing a lot right now, but it's all late in providing arms, late in ramping up arms shipments, late in escalating sanctions, late in providing actionable battlefield intelligence. All good now, mostly good, but late. So I see a lot of blame to go around myself.
Well, you mentioned no question, but I mean, just to be clear, I didn't say Republican or Democrat. I said the Council on Foreign Relations neocon foreign policy establishment in D.C. that we're supposed to trust now after they have gotten so much wrong over the last 25 years.
Yeah. No, I wasn't trying to. Thank you for that. I wasn't trying to characterize your position. I was just expressing mine. And
Yeah, yeah.
I guess we'd have to define neocon. Sometimes neocon is meant to suggest someone who supports a strong, U.S. Foreign policy undergirded by strength. And if that's how we define it, then
And glibness associated with their failures, and
Yeah.
now they want to come over the top and be ridiculously provocative and publicly so.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a fair criticism. I in January before the invasion, was writing op-eds and talking on C-SPAN, warning about, like many of the folks, a lot of this was coming, and that we needed to ramp up arms shipments to Ukraine. And unfortunately, the administration dithered in December, January, losing several weeks. And I think a lot of that was based on what I call the provocation premise. Oh, we better not provoke Putin, right? So you hear me arguing for a strong approach, but I'm also not someone who's been in favor of establishing a no-fly zone, right? So I think we need to be assertive and strong and understand how Putin views hard power, and he's not particularly impressed by eloquent communiques from the State Department. In the end, he's going to push as far forward as he can with his bayonet until he hits something hard, and that hard thing has been NATO and U.S. military power for decades. And that's why he picks on, occupies, and invades Georgia and Ukraine, but he doesn't do that to NATO members. So that's why I've been arguing arm the Ukrainians, reinforce the eastern flank of NATO, but be careful, right? Because we were able to avoid direct conflict more or less with Russia throughout the Cold War. We need to be smart and assertive, but not over the top crazy right now. And I think talk of assassinating Putin is not responsible talk right now.
Yeah.
So I'd agree with you on that.
And what about Poland donating, their Russian-built fighter jets to the Ukrainians, and then we replace those with American planes?
Yeah, I think, I've been arguing since before the invasion we need to be moving heaven and earth to get Ukrainians what they need to fight. They're willing to fight. They're proud. They're angrier than ever at Russia, and we should get them what they need. And Zelensky's saying they need these Russian-made fighters from Eastern European countries, right, because their pilots know how to fly them. I hope Poland and other countries say yes to that request, and I hope Biden is moving heaven and earth to encourage Poland to do that and to backfill those fighter aircraft with American F-16s or whatever, right? Because if you're Poland, right, it's like the neighborhood's looking a little sketchy right now. You don't really want to give up your means to defend yourself. I understand that. But so let's do what we can to kind of backfill those fighters, but get those to Ukraine ASAP. But here's the thing, I'm a former Black Hawk pilot. These things take time, right? But we don't really have time because as we're speaking, major Ukrainian cities are being surrounded. Putin's trying to decapitate the Ukrainian government. And so, getting javelins in there, getting these Stinger missiles in there, that can be done a little quicker. Moving aircraft is a whole other thing. I'm not saying we shouldn't try, but, some weapons transfers are easier than others. But I would be supportive of the move of supporting Zelensky's request. Absolutely. But it will take a little time, and we need to sprint to satisfy it.
And you and your colleagues at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies wrote about other weapons that we can and should get to the Ukrainians, opening up additional supply routes in the event that Russia tries to interdict these weapons, but specifically the sort of anti-tank weapons that give Ukrainians an advantage and an ability to take out some of these Russian convoys and Russian armaments.
Yeah, no, we did, and like I said, we lost a lot of valuable weeks the Biden administration did in December and January. I mean, we had European allies who had U.S.-made weapons who were just asking for permission from Washington to transfer those weapons to Ukraine. They wanted to do it. They were begging to do it, and they were waiting weeks for that permission. As someone who served in the Army, I understand it's not just about sending them, right? You got to get them into the hands of the people who are going to use them. You got to make sure they're properly trained and they're forward positioned. Thankfully now we've sent a lot of shipments. But a few days ago, they were saying that they might run out of these javelins and Stingers in a week or so. And so that's why getting the Germans to drop their double standard about not arming Ukraine in the last week or so is really positive, because they're starting to send the Stinger missiles too. But the bottom line is, I fear, the Ukrainians are fighting bravely to defend their homes and their land. I've said from the beginning, don't underestimate the will and determination of a free people to defend their homes. But when you look at every major metric of combat power, even though the Russian invasion has been surprising in some of its shortcomings, just from a military analysis perspective, the Russian military, outnumbers the Ukrainians in almost every area. And so it's just a matter of time, I fear, that we're going to see more cities falling. But in the long run, in my view, as others have said, this is a grand strategic disaster for Putin, because he may be able to take cities and defeat much of the Ukrainian military, but he will never defeat the Ukrainian people, who are more angry than ever at him and have a clearer view than ever about what's at stake in terms of subjugation or freedom.
What about the Russian people? There's been some hopeful talk about an uprising in Russia against Putin, maybe even led by some of the oligarchs who've lost their yachts. Former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, talked about the Russian people can stop Putin, and also this rather interesting admission by a Russian lieutenant colonel who was captured by the Ukrainians and made a public statement where he admitted that the Russians are committing genocide. He said that he was fed the propaganda that they were going in to denazify Ukraine. This was, a special operation. They were on, the right side of the issue morally, and now he says that was all untrue. Is that a statement given under duress? And whether it is or not, is that sort of statement coming from a Russian officer something that could actually help destabilize Putin at home, or is that just wishful thinking?
It's a great question. I have great respect, frankly. I don't see this. I don't see the enemy here as the Russian people, right? I see our adversary here as Vladimir Putin and what he's doing, and I have great admiration for the Russian people who are going out and protesting. I mean, they know that it could entail long prison sentences. Some of them may never come out of prison, the legal career ramifications of that. So going out and protesting, knowing those potential consequences, I think are incredible acts of bravery, and I admire that deeply. And we have seen massive protests in Russia. We also see a massive crackdown on free press in Russia, right, as Putin tries to control his message. And sure enough, we see lots and lots of anecdotal evidence on social media and elsewhere about a lot of the Russian soldiers that are invading Ukraine. Some of them didn't even know they were going into Ukraine, right. And many of them thought that they would be welcomed when they arrived there. And when unarmed Ukrainians went and blocked the path of tanks trying to enter their cities, or when they started to get attacked, there is a little bit of a wake-up call. And Putin's fed all this, right, both to the Russian people and evidently to parts of his military, or much of his military, which is outright lies. Talking about denazifying Ukraine, right, which is of course preposterous. Zelensky is a Jewish Ukrainian, as is the defense minister. It's just preposterous. But unfortunately, right, we're seeing the power, not only being reminded of the relevance of land power and hard power, but we're being reminded of the power for good or evil of disinformation. And so it's just a reminder, I think, forever, where we want to get as much truth to the Russian people as possible, so that they can decide on the merits of what their government is doing. And it's also a reminder, I think, just with some humility to Americans, that, let's watch our news sources to make sure that we're hearing the right thing. But unfortunately, we know the Russians are trying to shape the domestic discourse in our country to support what they're trying to do. So to me, it's a reminder of that, not only the power of hard power, the importance of hard power, but the importance of getting true and correct information.
He is Bradley Bowman, Senior Director of the Center on Military and Political Power at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He served as a National Security Advisor to members of the U.S. Senate Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committees, as well as an active-duty U.S. Army officer, Black Hawk pilot, and assistant professor at West Point. Bradley Bowman, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
A while back, we at AmericanEagle.com were asked to build the e-commerce site of a major candy distributor. With the need for a website that could take into account everything from shipping times to local weather, because, candy melts, the task was not like taking candy from a baby. Fortunately, we live for a good digital challenge and free bonbons. So we got to work on a slew of complex integrations, including a shipping algorithm that factored in variables like distance, speed, and location. The website even let the end customer personalize their candy for special events, like weddings or, major website launches? When all was said and done, our client enjoyed a significant increase in traffic, which we were also well prepared for, and an increase in average order size. A sweet result indeed. For complex e-commerce sites, digital marketing, UX, and more, talk to the experts at AmericanEagle.com. Don't just grow, soar.
40 days up to 40 pounds. Say it with me. 40 days up to 40 pounds. That's how much you could lose when you join NJ Diet. Because NJ Diet only takes 40 days to lose 20 to 40 plus pounds. Since NJ Diet is a contractually guaranteed money-back program, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. NJ Diet is 100% tailored to you by using bioenergetically personalized supplements based on your hair, saliva, and blood work. Then NJ Diet uses DNA testing to create your ideal diet plan and workout regimen to help you keep it off. 40 days up to 40 pounds can be a real thing. Unlike other weight loss systems, NJ Diet is all natural. No shots, no hormones, no prepackaged foods, and no surgery. With offices in Skokie and Oak Brook,